Hey guys, Rob Jean here.
And I'm Liana Smith, with another episode of Crash Course U.S. History. I know we don't normally cover anything after the 90s, but history is still history.
The election of President George W. Bush in the 2000s was one of the most controversial elections of our nation's history, because it highlighted our system of voting, which isn't entirely democratic.
Well, technically.
Yes, me from the past, the Electoral College. In the 2000 election, George W. Bush garnered a total of 50.5 million votes, which is a lot, but just not quite as much as Democratic candidate Al Gore with 51 million votes.
So how did Bush win? His votes were spread out over all the states, winning him small majorities throughout the South and the Midwest, which won him the electoral vote in all these states, including a much contested state, Florida.
But if there was one event that defined the first decade of the new millennium, it was 9/11.
On the morning of September 11th, 2001, 4 passenger planes were hijacked by Islamic extremists. 3 were later flown into the World Trade Center in towers in Manhattan and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. The 4th crashed into a field in rural Pennsylvania, downed after passengers tried to retake the plane. In all, nearly 3,000 people lost their lives in the worst terrorist attack in U.S. history.
Stateside, we passed a law called the USA Patriot Act, which stands for the Uniting and Strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism Act.
Boy, what a mouthful!
The Patriot Act allowed the government almost Orwellian new powers, including the ability to wiretap the public, enabling spying on the American people. This also led to the questioning of nearly 5,000 American citizens and the arrests of 1,200, many of whom did not have a warrant for their arrest, which violates the writ of habeas corpus. You know, that little writ they had that's been a staple of Western law since, like, I don't know, the Magna Carta.
Hi, Chandon. How was your day?
Good, how was your day, Sydney?
It was pretty bad. Did you hear about the new Patriot Act? It totally violates our freedom of speech.
Yeah, I heard about that. They can actually wiretap our phones. I can't believe it.
I know, I feel like I have to be careful in what I say. Like, what if they're listening to us right now?
I'm gonna get them terrorists yet.
In 2002, President Bush made an open condemnation to the state of Iraq as a rogue nation alleged to possess weapons of mass destruction and have ties to Al-Qaeda. In 2003, after making his case to the American people and to the UN, Bush invaded Iraq and toppled Saddam Hussein's tyrannical regime.
Yet upon further inspection, it was discovered that Iraq had no ties to the events of 9/11, and they didn't have WMDs at all. Meanwhile, the situation in Iraq deteriorated as religious tensions emerged and a complex insurgency began attacking American troops who had just recently been greeted as liberators.
When the election happens, John Kerry appeared to be strong considering the weaknesses in the economy after the dot-com bubble burst in 2000, the lack of jobs, and deteriorating situation in Iraq.
President Bush played the role of a strong leader, taking advantage of America's obsession with stability in times of war, leading to his re-election in 2004, which was with a much more comfortable voter margin this time.
Now it's time for the mystery document. But since it's the 21st century, we're doing it on a phone. Yay, technology. Alright, the rules of the mystery document are fairly simple. I read the document, I guess the time period and the author. If I get it right, I don't get shocked. Now, onto the document. After 9/11, our calling was to write a new chapter in the American story, to devise new strategies and build new alliances, to secure our homeland and safeguard our values, and to serve a just cause abroad. Americans were united. The tide of history seemed poised to turn, once again, toward hope. But then everything changed. We did not finish the job against Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. We did not develop new capabilities to defeat a new enemy, or launch a comprehensive strategy to drive the terrorist space of support. We did not reaffirm our basic values or secure our homeland. Instead, we got a color-coded politics of fear, patriotism as the possession of one political party, diplomacy of refusing to talk to other countries, a rigid 20th century ideology that insisted that the 21st century stateless terrorism could be defeated through the invasion and occupation of a state, a deliberate strategy to misrepresent 9/11 to sell a war against a country that had nothing to do with 9/11. Okay, this is a bit of a doozy. Okay, I'm guessing this is after mid to late Bush administration, so maybe 2006, 2008, maybe. Maybe a politician. Probably not a Republican, since those guys are kind of on Bush's side. I'm going to have to go with... Again, there's a presidential campaign. So I'm going to have to go with 2006 ex-presidential campaign president, ex-presidential candidate, John Kerry.
Ooh, sorry about that, Ely. It wasn't John Kerry. It was Senator Barack Obama in 2007 at his speech. You know what that means?
Oh, no.
You know what that means?
No!
During his second term, Bush sought to use his hard-earned political capital primarily on privatizing Social Security and conducting troop surge to regain control in Iraq. But the biggest event by far that occurred under Bush's second term was the collapse of the housing market and the subsequent recession.
This recession was the biggest since the Great Depression. Due to lax regulation and cultural values that encouraged homeownership, mortgage lenders offered risky, subprime mortgages to millions of prospective buyers and homeowners. These mortgages, often accompanied by low down payments and interest-only plans, created a speculative bubble in the housing market that eventually popped in 2007. Unfortunately, this crisis did not stay isolated in the housing sector, or even the U.S. Banks had invested in subprime mortgages by purchasing them and turning them into stocks for individual corporate investors to bid on. When the mortgages began to fail in large numbers, banks began losing money and credit dried up, cutting off the circulation of money and thus suffocating our debt-based economy.
And because many of the buyers of these so-called mortgage securities were overseas, this economic crisis became a global pandemic.
In response to the mortgage crisis and the collapse of the international financial industry, the U.S. government responded by proceeding to bail out the banks in order to revive credit.
Unfortunately, the banks spent the money on bonuses and clearing out their bottom line of those toxic assets, causing ordinary Americans to wonder why their government was bailing out the banks while millions of people were being laid off.
It was this combination of economic catastrophe and a deteriorating international situation that propelled the Democrats to power. In 2006, the crisis in Iraq enabled the Democrats to take the majority of Congress. And while the economic crisis that occurred in 2008, it helped expand their majorities.
But it was the election of the first African American president that spelled the end of the Bush era and the beginning of the Obama nation. But in the interest of keeping things short and sweet, we'll keep that discussion for the next video.
I'm Rob Jean.
And I'm Chandan Bob.
Thanks for watching.